Trump's second American bill has been preliminarily passed amid performative opposition from both parties. After a brief compromise, Musk eventually chose to turn against it. Why must this highly controversial bill be implemented? How will the farce of the world's richest man clashing with the U.S. president end? When Musk angrily denounced the Republican Party as the main party and threatened to establish a new American political party, Trump said he was considering deporting Musk back to his native South Africa. The conflict between the two seems to have reached an irreconcilable point. Behind this farce, however, lies the powerlessness of the U.S. political and business elite class in the face of debt crises, political games, and industrial transformations. Why is Trump pushing hard for the Grand and Beautiful America Act? Because this bill is not only related to the U.S. government's fiscal dilemma but also deeply affects his governing foundation. In Trump's words mocking Musk, if the Grand and Beautiful America Act fails to pass, the U.S. government will shut down, and he himself will return to the state of awaiting trial. According to data from the U.S. Treasury Department, the U.S. government has run out of money to repay debts, with current funds expected to be exhausted by mid-August. If Congress does not act promptly to raise the debt ceiling, the U.S. may face a debt default, eventually leading to government bankruptcy and shutdown. Of course, this is not the first shutdown crisis for the U.S. government. During Obama's administration, due to a standoff between the two parties over the healthcare bill and the debt ceiling, the fiscal budget failed to pass, causing the federal government to shut down for 16 days. Approximately 800,000 employees were forced to take unpaid leave, and some public services were suspended. However, to maintain the government's operation, the two parties eventually chose to compromise. Obama's healthcare budget was preserved, the debt ceiling was suspended, and the government was restarted. Since then, the two parties have clashed multiple times over debt issues, but each time it ultimately ended with a debt ceiling increase. Trump's newly proposed Grand and Beautiful America Act shares no essential difference from past related budget bills. Both will eventually pass amid the two parties' negotiations and compromises. In fact, the U.S. government has been relying on borrowing since the George W. Bush era, and no one has been able to solve this problem. In reality, regardless of which party is in power, it will introduce its own Grand and Beautiful America Act and raise the debt ceiling. The difference lies in how interests are distributed. To consolidate his governing foundation, Trump must consider political gains. The primary beneficiaries of the new fiscal budget are the traditional U.S. military-industrial complex, a group fundamental to America that neither party dares to ignore. Thus, Trump increased military spending by $150 billion and even launched a Golden Dome project to repay his financial backers. The second beneficiary group is corporations and high-net-worth individuals. The Grand and Beautiful America Act essentially continues the tax cut policy from Trump's previous term. The core of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was reducing the corporate income tax rate from 35% to 21%, while most individual income tax rates were also lowered. The third group to benefit is the traditional energy industry. The new bill reduces tax credits for clean energy and increases support for fossil fuels. By ensuring the middle class and wealthy earners gain tangible benefits, Trump secures their continued support. Increasing defense and border spending further consolidates the backing of conservatives and satisfies the emotional needs of the MAGA movement. At the same time, Trump's hardline push for the Grand and Beautiful America Act also helps consolidate his leadership within the Republican Party. Although there are dissenting voices within the party, such as those from Paul and Tillis, Trump has successfully suppressed opposition through a strategy of intimidation and inducement, as well as agenda bundling. Most members, out of concern for their own political careers, eventually choose to compromise even if they are dissatisfied with Trump's policies. Additionally, the Grand and Beautiful America Act has formed a strategic suppression of the Democratic Party. In the 2 rounds of voting on the bill, Democratic lawmakers have held a strong opposing stance, but the bill still passed with a narrow margin. Democratic-led policies, such as Medicaid and new energy subsidy expenditures, have been significantly reduced, further weakening their political and social influence. It can be said that Trump has rallied party support through interest binding, then used the congressional majority to squeeze the Democratic Party's living space, ultimately achieving the goal of tilting limited resources toward conservatives. By expanding defense and border spending, he supports a tough foreign policy and America First agenda, thereby reshaping the voter base to pave the way for long-term Republican rule. In Trump's view, the Grand and Beautiful America Act is a win-win political strategy that allows him to avoid repeating the mistakes of his previous term. However, from Musk's perspective, he spent $275 million supporting Trump's rise to power but ended up with results completely unfavorable to himself, a business deal that no matter how it's calculated is a loss. Musk's commercial empire is built on Tesla's foundation. The green energy subsidy policies promoted by the Democratic Party previously helped Tesla's U.S. sales grow steadily, and these profits in turn supported SpaceX's expansion in the aerospace sector. The Grand and Beautiful America Act has slashed electric vehicle subsidies and tax credits, hitting the commercial foundation of Musk's empire. Additionally, SpaceX's participation in the U.S. air traffic control program was rejected, and the nomination of its new NASA director was withdrawn, severely marginalizing SpaceX in the commercial aerospace field. Musk once took on public criticism to lead the efficiency department in cutting government spending, but now he has been directly contradicted by the Grand and Beautiful America Act, a move that fundamentally negates all his previous investments and causes unprecedented damage to his commercial interests. Thus, Musk has essentially been pushed to revolt, but his own miscalculation of the gamble leaves him unable to contend with Trump. In the end, he must either choose to confront Trump to the end or swallow his pride and apologize for compromise again. After all, Trump even threatened to deport him back to South Africa. Under such circumstances, it is difficult for Musk to maintain the resolve to fight to the finish. Overall, Trump's bill currently appears to be a huge victory, but in the long run, it will inflict the deepest harm on American society and the economy. On the one hand, it will exacerbate political polarization. The Democratic Party will never accept being suppressed and will inevitably take action to resist Trump's extreme policies in the future. On the other hand, as former U.S. Treasury Secretary Summers has stated, the Grand and Beautiful America Act will push the U.S. toward a fiscal cliff. This unprecedented debt expansion may fundamentally shake the U.S. dollar's hegemonic system and reshape the global economic order. To put it bluntly, the U.S. dollar's credibility has essentially collapsed under the U.S. government's wanton trampling, and U.S. Treasury bonds are facing a collapse. The nearly 5% high yield brings increasingly huge debt payments, and now new U.S. debt has no overseas investors, almost all are absorbed domestically. Once the internal circulation chain breaks, it will immediately trigger external sell-offs, and that will be the moment the American edifice collapses. Perhaps you may ask, don't America's political and business elites see the crisis? In reality, they know better than anyone how dangerous the situation is. However, expecting capitalists and interest groups to sacrifice themselves to save the country is completely impossible. As long as their own interests are intact, what does it matter if America collapses? In their view, this might even be an excellent opportunity to redivide the spoils. Therefore, American politicians and elites have neither the motivation nor the courage to solve internal problems. Taking advantage of the chaos to reap more benefits is their top priority. What are your thoughts on this? Feel free to share your views in the comment section.